You're listening to the Faith Breathed Hope podcast, episode number 170. Living in the past is not time well spent. However, pausing to reflect on God's goodness in our lives gives hope and reminds us that He is near. Join me as we take a walk down memory lane and reflect on the top 15 episodes from season 1 of Faith Breathed Hope. Join me today as I speak with husband, father, podcaster, entrepreneur, and speaker Erik Allen on perseverance built on a biblical foundation. You can find Erik on social, The Erik Allen Show, and on his site at Erik Allen Media. Welcome to the Faith Breathed Hope podcast, where we gain inspiration and motivation from others who share their touching stories of renewing hope and discovering purpose in any circumstance. I'm your host, Christina Reisinger, and today we will be encouraged by another tremendously inspirational topic that will embolden you to release fear, begin taking small steps forward, and move into your God-given purpose to live and serve in this life. Join me for today's story. Hey, Erik, and welcome to the Faith Breathed Hope podcast. I am so glad you're here today. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. I'm honored to be on.
So can you start off, the first thing I have everybody do when they come on the show is start off by just introducing themselves, telling the audience who you are and what you do.
Yeah, my name is Erik Allen. I'm the host of two podcasts, Top Rated MMA, which is focused obviously on the MMA side of things. I love to hear the stories of fighters, how they got in MMA and kind of what they're doing now or where they grew up and things like that. And then the Bearded Biz show is where I talk with what I call entrepreneurs, world changers, and success-minded people, and kind of the same tactic of hearing people's stories, where they came from in childhood and how they became successful and where they're at today.
Yeah, and we were just talking about that. So the place in my show is just to share stories of finding hope. And so today we're going to talk about perseverance that is built on a biblical foundation. So you have had some things go on in your life that, as we all do, find challenging, and you've kind of had to figure out how to navigate those waters. Would you like to just kind of tell us some things that happened, and we'll go from there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in a typical household, so I thought it was typical, Little League, and, my dad would take me and my buddy to big dumpsters behind grocery stores or furniture stores and throw us in and say, hey, go find treasure, right? I mean, that was just like normal life for me. And but my parents, they got divorced when I was 11 years old. I grew up going to church prior to that. I was the kid who would go to Sunday school, and then I'd kind of sneak away to the bathroom and just hang out and didn't want to necessarily be engaged in that. And so it was an interesting childhood for sure. And when my parents got divorced, they both got together with other people very, very, very quickly. And my mom's boyfriend at the time was extremely abusive right away. Probably one of the first two times that I met him, I watched him hit my mom. And then they continued to stay. I never understood why my mom wanted to stay in that relationship, but they ended up having a son together. And I probably saw my mom get beat up, more times than I could remember. And they decided to move us to Montana after my 8th grade year. And so I think I was around 12 years old, got up there, and the abuse didn't stop. He never hit me or my sister or my half brother. He was just actually born right when we got to Montana. But we moved into a house up there that was 3 bedrooms. So it was my mom and her boyfriend and my little half brother and my sister. And so for me, they put up a plastic tarp in the garage in Montana and said, this is your room. And so I was out in the garage. I had a fireplace, but I had to learn how to stoke that thing, keep that warm through the night. I'd have like 10 layers of blankets during the winter, get down below zero sometimes. And so that was where I lived. And I remember being 13 years old, and I was in the bathroom at around midnight, probably on a weekend, and my mom and her boyfriend had come home arguing. I think my sister was at a friend's house, and they came home. It wasn't anything out of the norm. But I remember brushing my teeth, and I felt something in my heart say, no, you got to turn around and look. And so the way the house was set up is if I kind of peeked around the corner this way to my right and then looked down the hall, it would be the kitchen, then the pantry, and then the garage to where I was staying. That was my room out there. And as I turned around the corner, I saw him on top of my mom and just punching, boom, boom, one after the other, hitting her in the face. And for some reason, I'd seen it before many times, but I think in that moment, all of a sudden it was like, no, you got to put a stop to this. And so I actually went up behind him and I grabbed a frying pan, happened to be one of those cast iron heavy duty pans you take camping with you. Mm-hmm. And I played Little League. I got a pretty good swing and I swung as hard as I could. I hit him in the back of the head and split his head open and didn't knock him out. He turned around and he looked at me in the face and he said, what the, and as he said that again, I took another swing and split his forehead open. And surprisingly, still didn't knock him out. I remember him standing over me at that moment, and he was beginning to yell. And my mom comes out of nowhere and lands like 5 or 6 punches in a row to his face, and blood is splatting behind him on the wall. The police finally came, took him to jail. No charges were pressed. And it was after that I decided that I need to get out of there. And so I finished my 9th grade year in Montana and moved back to Washington to live with my dad. And my dad rented a house, and he said, this is where we'll live, but he put $20 in a cup. That was my lunch money for the week, and then he'd go stay with his girlfriend. So my sophomore through senior year, I rarely saw my dad. He would just put that $20 in the cup each week, and I was kind of on my own.
Oh, wow. So it's from one turbulent situation to another. So first thing I want to ask you, so from there, is that through the rest of your time in high school you were like that, or yes?
Yeah, I was pretty lost in high school. I smoked a lot of pot, got my hands on whatever drugs I could get on. I was fond of hallucinogens, so lots of acid, mushrooms. We would go to the store and buy 8-ounce bottles of Robitussin DM because it had morphine in it. It would make us hallucinate, and so I kind of got lost in my house because my dad wasn't there. I knew that we could smoke pot in the backyard in the shed, or we could sometimes have parties. My dad would, rarely show up, but there'd be times where I would see my dad for months at a time. And when I was 18 years old, I got arrested for having a bong. I had to put a black and white chain gang outfit on and go to jail for 24 hours. I had bright orange slippers, and probably one of the scariest moments I've had in my life, at least at that moment.
I can assume so. So what happened after that? I'm assuming that there was a turning point in some place. Was that your rock bottom, or did it continue on from there?
You would think. You would think. Yeah, it really wasn't. I got a 1-year probation, and so I couldn't smoke pot for a year. And so that's when I kind of kicked the heat up on drinking, because I knew I wasn't going to get tested for alcohol. Mm-hmm. And so I did. I started drinking pretty heavily. I moved to Seattle, Washington once I graduated high school, and kind of got right back into it. My dream was always to get in the music business. And so I got into the music business. I don't know how to play, but I ended up landing a job with Universal Records, and I'd open tab to any concert that I wanted. So I was going to 2 or 3 concerts a week and hanging out backstage with bands. And there's lots of things backstage that I have access to, and really started to just live this rock star lifestyle without being a musician. And I think God was in that kind of in the works, even at the end, because I got laid off and I was kind of this depressed guy, and I was working at Starbucks at night. And while I was working at Starbucks at night, this girl had come in. She was drinking a tea, and she invited me to go to this church event that was kind of tailored towards college people. And I was in my early 20s. And so I said, I have friends. So yeah, sure, I'll go hang out. And so I got there, and there's a lot of people that I actually had these connections with from the town that I grew up in. It was just really strange. Like, hey, I went to school with you, or I went to college with you, and just real kind of strange connections. And so it was a couple months later, it was Easter, and I went out and partied with my buddies, and we had a concert. I was managing a band, and we had a concert, and I woke up on Easter morning surrounded by 10 or 12 guys in my buddy's basement. They were all passed out. And I remember God in that moment said, you're done. And I cold turkey everything, drugs, drinking, cigarettes, everything right there. And I gave my life to Christ in that basement by myself. And then I called that girl up that invited me to that church event, and I said, hey, I just want to say happy Easter. I got her voicemail, and hopefully I'll see you in the store next, soon. Well, flash forward a couple months later, we're dating. A year later, we're married, and we've been married now for 15 years. And we have 2 awesome kids.
Wonderful. So yeah, I was going to ask you, so, before you had mentioned depression, but before you got to that place, I was going to say, did anything kind of pop up to you? Like, had you ever been diagnosed with depression, or you just kind of just knew that this was all the things that you were going through? You felt depressed, or?
Yeah, I mean, I never went to a counselor or anything like that. I did after I got married because I had to deal with a lot of just issues that was trying to keep inside. But yeah, I never at the time I never thought I was diagnosed with depression. I just knew like my life was go to work at Starbucks. Once I got laid off from the music business, I felt like my dream was gone. Like that was all what I always wanted to do was be in the music business. And once that was gone, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't have a college degree. I can do sales jobs, but I'm transferring jobs every couple of months, right? And so I was working at Starbucks, and I would get off work. I'd go to Hollywood Video. I'd rent a couple of VHS movies or DVDs and go back to my apartment and drink a 6-pack of beer. And that was my daily routine. And I didn't have any friends. And then when my wife had invited me to that church event, I was like, yeah, sure, I'll go.
So at the point where God told you, this is it, you're done. Was it easy? Does that mean it was easy for you to put everything down? I mean, because I know with addiction, there's a grand desire in a lot of people, but the ability to actually really put it down and leave it down and continue to walk forward without it is a lot more difficult than people who do not suffer with addiction can even understand. So
yeah, I think for me it was easy to stop. Like it was easy to quit. What was the hardest part was telling my friends, like, hey, for me, I have to take a step back and I can't come hang out with you right now. Mm-hmm. I can't go get a beer with you right now because I got to take a step back for me. I got to understand that. I mean, I have to get myself right, because if I continue to go down that path, then I'm going to go down a path I don't want to go down. And my friends, luckily, they were all like supportive of that and say, hey, man, we totally understand. And I'm friends with them today. But I really had to take this 3 to 6 month break of really going out and hanging out and going to concerts and being around that type of environments and just really focus and meditate on drawing close to God.
Yeah. And, God, when God is in it, I think it's obviously easier. It's coming to that place where you allow God to be in it. I think, you actually receive his peace, his, you're giving him your trust and you're submitting and saying, hey, I can't control this. Because I think it's human nature to say, oh, I've got this. I can handle this. I don't need anybody's help. I've seen a lot of things. I've been through a lot of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what would you say to the person who is young right now and is this piece of abuse is really something that I feel like somebody needs to hear. So there's somebody who really is in that situation right now, and they see that and they struggle because they love the person that they are observing this happen to. I mean, do you have anything that you could tell them? Because I guess you wouldn't want to really say, hey, you need to leave or anything, because you wouldn't want to be responsible for anything that happened. But
right.
Yeah.
I do think, and maybe it's because I'm older now, but I do think that at some point I had to walk away from my mom knowing that she made the choice and that she would have to make the choice to leave. And she did. It was a couple years later, she made the choice to leave, that gentleman. But I had seen it for long enough in myself that I had to go and back to my dad. And I didn't know the environment that I was going to. I didn't know that he was going to just rent this house and then go stay with his girlfriend. I had no idea that was how it was going to be. But I had to, for myself, I had to walk away from that. And because I tried and I tried and I tried to fight for that. And I get like somebody who's witnessing that today probably have that same thoughts of like, do I leave? Are they going to get hurt? Is it going to be worse? And I think it really kind of depends on the situation. But at some point, I really truly believe that they have to make that choice. Yes, you can keep fighting. You can keep praying. I think that's very powerful. Mm-hmm. But at some point, you have to almost let them walk out of that. Like you can't force somebody out of that situation. And it's very tough for them. I've not never asked my mom what made her decide what was the breaking point on her side that made her walk away. But I'm glad that she did. But yeah, so it's a tough situation. I would say one thing that I always push for people is if you're walking around at, like, say 60 degrees temperature wise, and you want to get out of that negative area and go hang around with people who are positive, hang around with guys who are walking around 120 degrees. They'll lift your temperature up. They'll bring that positivity on you. So if you're around that abuse, start hanging around people who are going to be positive and uplifting, and your emotional sense, I think your relationship with God could draw closer. And I think you'll start to see what things you should and shouldn't be doing for that person that is in that abusive side of things.
Yeah, I like that. So I can't even imagine the amount of emotions that come up. I guess there's probably anger and guilt and unforgiveness, and just how do you deal with all of those? Because even if you are walking away and you're physically safe, or I guess you were physically safe in the moment, but then the way that you coped was through drugs and alcohol and things like that. And that is not, that is not something that's going to get you out of that situation. It's just going to kind of cover it up for a while until it gets you into more trouble.
Yeah, exactly.
What is the thing? So we talk about prayer, but say I'm in this situation where I'm right smack in the middle of it, and I don't have anybody that is around me. And, I just don't know what to do. I don't know where to walk away. I don't have support. I feel like my self-worth is just nothing. What would you say to that person?
There's one person that's always with you, and that's God. When I gave my life to Christ, there was nobody that was saved around me. There was nobody that was there to encourage me. And I gave my life to Christ in that basement by myself because I felt God saying, "You're done." I had a pastor tell me around that time that God almost has us on these puppet strings, that when we sin, he cuts the string and he reties it and brings us a little bit closer to him. And it was at that moment in that basement that I kind of felt like I had finally, my puppet string was gone. I was in his hands, And I think even if you don't know anybody that can lift you up or get you out of that positive, like, God's always listening. God's always with you. And I think a lot of times I struggled with, why is this happening? Why is my life this way? And I think what we need to realize is life happens for us, not to us. And we learn from those lessons so we can keep going. And I think that if you're in that situation, pray. There's a lot of resources online where you can be, put in a request to local church or whatnot and go from there. But yeah, I definitely took the wrong path, right? Like, I wanted to get away from that situation, but I went the wrong way. I went to the negative side and I started getting into the drugs. But had I gone the other path and got saved or started hanging around people that were in church at my school, my life probably would have been way different at that time.
Right. Yeah. We all go through things. I mean, it's easy to look at somebody, especially now with social media, and you see everybody putting the best of their life, on so everybody can see them smiling and having fun and doing all the things. And, what you don't know is really what happened 20 minutes before that photograph was posted. Somebody was being fussed at or, hurt some way, mentally, emotionally, physically, whatever it is. And it's hard, even if you are in that situation, to admit that to other people in a world that really shows, all the things that we are doing. So when people find themselves in a situation where they really feel a lot of despair, you would just suggest that they pray. And what if they say, "Hey, I don't know how to pray. I've never prayed before." What would you say about that?
Yeah, that's great. That's a great question, because I think that is a lot of people who don't know the Lord will ask that question, like, how do I pray, right? I mean, for me, I had to realize that God is just my friend. I can talk to him how I would talk to my physical buddy, whether that's in anger or fear, especially if you don't know God, like, there's going to probably be some anger if there were some bad things that happened in your life. But he's there to hear you. And, obviously a lot of folks, they may not vocally hear his voice, but man, they're going to feel it in his heart or in their heart, and God will lead them. But I think just prayer is really anything, right? Like, I mean, I don't want to say anything, but prayer is between you and God. So it doesn't have to be like saying special words or, you know, saying the same word 12 times in a row, right? It's like, hey, this is between me and you, and God, I just went through a situation and it sucks and I don't know how to get through this. And, you know, I don't even know what you can do for me, but if you can help me get through this, that would be awesome. Be like, or pray that, you know, somebody brings someone into your life that intervenes and kind of gets you out of that situation. I didn't know the Lord, but God brought my wife, my now wife, into my life through a Starbucks meetup or communication, right? Like, she came into my store who doesn't drink coffee, and, you know, we find out on our honeymoon that we were actually born at the exact same time. We're both born at 1:41 p.m. So I just think it's funny, like, you know, but yeah, I think if you don't know the Lord, I think, and you want to start praying, you just pray and you just speak how you would speak to anybody, you know, and I think that don't worry about the TV, like, Christian-y words, like, be real with God and he's real with you, you know?
I would agree with that 100% because prayer is so complicated and so simple at the same time. And the reason that I think that it's complicated is because I think other people make it complicated. When my daughter was sick, and my daughter passed away, for anybody who is just listening to this for the first time, she passed away in 2016. But when she did, and before that she was sick, I was praying and, you know, went through this huge thing about my prayer life after she passed away because, you know, it was a good prayer, right? I was praying for somebody's life. And so I was actually talking to somebody about this the other day. I really felt like maybe I didn't pray right. I didn't ask for the right thing. I didn't ask it the right way. And other Christians would say, well, you have to pray this way. You have to believe, and you have to do this, and you have to do that. And I got to this place where I really felt like I was walking on eggshells. And I said, you know what? God already knows my thoughts. He already knows my heart. He knows who I am inside and out. He formed me. You know, I can just talk to him. I'm not going to cuss him out or anything if I'm angry. But, you know, if I do have, you know, something ill that comes into my mind, he already knows it. So why should I be ashamed to, you know, hold that back? And then it's okay. You know, when we don't know how to pray, we don't have to, like you said, have these fancy words. We can just say, you know, I don't know what to say. God, I need help. And, you know, for me, over the past 3 years, one of those prayers sounded like, God, I just miss her. Because there was nothing else that I could say over being heartbroken and finding those moments of deep grief, that I didn't even know what to ask God for. And I think for those of you who are listening right now, if you find yourself in that place and you say, well, I wouldn't even know what to say to God, I don't know, then just say that. God, I don't know what to say. I don't, but you know, like you're saying, Erik, it's about you and your relationship with God. And I think that the more that you pray and the more that you, you know, get to read the Bible and spend time with God, that relationship opens up and those words start to flow more. So
absolutely.
So you have had quite a story, and now you are helping other people share their stories. It's a little bit of a different avenue, but they're sharing stories of overcoming still, right? And then how they are successful in business. Is that?
Yeah. You know, I love to hear people's stories. And so on my podcast, like I said, I really focus on the MMA side of things for that side. And then the other side is really wide open. So I've talked with everybody from Ed Milet to Tim Story to Sean Whalen to a 14-year-old kid who lives on a farm in England making 30 grand a year on eBay. You know, I love just hearing the stories of people getting through things and being able to be successful in life. And it's not all about money. It's about being happy, getting to the happy point, you know, and stories of overcoming. And so, yeah, I love to hear those stories. I myself didn't share my personal story until last year. And it was a huge weight off my shoulders. So anything that I could do to help others bring that story and get inspired by their stories, then that's what I'm all for.
Yeah, so I love sharing stories as well, and I think that when we share stories, it gives people things to listen to that are very intriguing, but it helps them relate. It helps them know that they're not alone. Hey, there is somebody out there that has something similar going on to me, and they are moving forward through it. They're having some joy. They're able to find love again. They're able to find some peace. They are able to accept God's grace, whatever that may be from them. And it also, I don't know if you noticed this, but for me, it helps me continue to heal. So
Yeah.
this was something that didn't even occur to me until this year. And I've only been doing this for a year or so, but it was a good probably 8 months into it before I said, you know what? This is helping me as well continue my healing journey by
Yeah.
sharing other people's stories and getting them to open up, because that, like you said, that gives that release. And then they also can understand that they're not alone. Okay, so Erik, would you please tell everybody where they can find you? I know you have the 2 podcasts. Is there anywhere else they could find you if they want to come join you somehow?
Yeah, that's awesome. So thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, I'm on Facebook, Top Rated MMA, and Bearded Biz. It's BIZ. Same on Instagram, bearded.biz and Top Rated MMA. Also myself is just Erik, Erik, G like George, and then Allen is my Instagram handle and Twitter handle. We're on YouTube. We're on every audio format out there, iHeartRadio, iTunes, Spotify, etc. And just really, really blessed to be able to be on the show. Thank you so much.
I really have enjoyed having you here. So hopefully we will stay connected. And for all of you out there, I hope you continue to be blessed and bless others. And I'll talk to you next time. And I want to thank you for joining us on Faith Breathed Hope, where you gain inspiration and motivation to renew hope and discover purpose in any circumstance. Please like and share this podcast and give us a review on iTunes. Be blessed.